Welcome to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with listeners like you.
In the house behind, the life you find is something understood. So there's no
A dream can be meaningful even if you don't know what it means.
We are not alone, water over stone, even if you're by yourself, even if you're by yourself.
Today's music is called Sky Ocean. Can dreaming help us integrate psychedelic experiences? How dreams and visions can take us both to the boundaries of consciousness. Today's guest is Adam Miezio. I am your host, Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. The Festival of Dreams is a gathering of dreamophiles at the Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History, October 10th through 11th. I just sent out acceptance letters to 27 fabulous presenters. Tickets and many more details can be found at festivalofdreams.net. Early bird discounts are available through September 10th, plus bring a friend and save. Adam Miezio is a writer in the psychedelics field, thanks to lifelong psychedelic journeying and plant medicine work. Born in Chicago, he received his master's degree from Northeastern Illinois University. He writes about mental health, psychedelics, psychology, shamanism, and fringe ideas on the fuzzy periphery of consciousness. He resides in Oaxaca, Mexico. And you can find our guest at adammiezio.com. That's Adam, A-D-A-M, and Miezio is spelled M-I-E-Z-I-O, adammiezio.com. You can look for him on LinkedIn, and he's got a fabulous Substack called The Divine Influx. You can find him at adammiezio.substack.com. The Divine Influx. So, welcome, Adam.
Thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and grateful for the invite.
Excellent. Okay. Well, so glad to meet you. And you're one of my new LinkedIn connections. I'm finding it to be a really powerful social media platform. And it taps us into a topic that I am really fond of, near and dear to my heart, having to do with psychedelics and dream work. There's got to be some connection. The states are so related to each other. The idea of the visions and seeing things and having insights. So really, that's one of the big connections for me between dreaming and psychedelics is the insights that we get. And it's not always obvious why we're having an insight, like in a dream. I may not understand the dream, and yet I can find something meaningful in that. And same with psychedelic experiences that I may not understand what's happening, and yet I very often find that something is better. Like it resolves things. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the last couple of Substacks I've written about a lot of the research that's been done that's found a lot of overlap and similarities between psychedelics and dreaming. They're very, very similar states. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's because they lead us to the unconscious. And there's a lot of insight, wisdom, and benefits of exploring the unconscious. And so the two states, psychedelics or dreaming, mm-hmm. Can offer us a lot of psychic wellness, if you could say.
Right. Okay. Oh, psychic wellness. I like that phrase.
Yeah. So the thing I'd say maybe one of the main differences between psychedelics and dreaming is that, of course, nobody needs psychedelics to dream. Everybody can dream on their own.
All right.
However, obviously, to gain some of that insight with psychedelics, you need a plant medicine, a psychedelic. However, the difference with psychedelics is that after taking or using psychedelics, it tends to dredge up, I would say, our unconscious, maybe kind of like shaking up a snow globe or even tilling the soil. So when you dream, a lot of things emerge and surface that you weren't previously aware of, and that's where the treasure is at.
I love that analogy of shaking up a snow globe, or even the tilling the soil is maybe even better. It's because it's a generative metaphor, but there's something about that accessing the unconscious or the subconscious, however you like to call that, is powerful. There's a lot of wisdom in there that I guess we just override it in our waking life. But why is it so hard to access the subconscious? Do you have any thoughts about that? I mean, it's coming to me now, this question.
It's not that it's so difficult to access your unconscious. And there is a little bit of a difference between your subconscious and your unconscious.
Oh, do tell me. This is something I've often wondered about.
Your subconscious is definitely accessible and easier to access. Maybe even something might come to mind when you're daydreaming. But the unconscious is much, much more difficult to access. That's why dreaming and psychedelics are so potent. It gives us access that we normally don't have.
To the unconscious.
Yes, exactly, to the unconscious. And that's where the most powerful insights and psychic wisdom are found, in the unconscious. So that's what makes it so valuable. As I mentioned in the Substack I wrote, it's a very powerful tool to do dream journaling while integrating. Because while you're integrating after a psychedelic experience, you have very, very vibrant, potent, powerful dreams that you maybe normally wouldn't have. And then these things that are accessed through this, whether you want to call it shaking up a snow globe, tilling the soil, dredging, they start to appear in your dreams. And those things are invaluable to explore and think about and reflect on.
Right. Well, you give me some a good thing to think about, which is the idea of integrating a psychedelic experience. It's not like you can just expect to see great personal growth through doing some psychedelics and then walking away from the day. There is something about integration that's extremely important, and you might like to talk a little bit about that, and particularly as in the context of how do dreams help us integrate, maybe with some examples.
Sure. So I would say right away that psychedelics don't immediately turn on a button or flip a switch to improve you as a person and human being. You definitely have to do the integration. I was not a fan of integration years ago. I was like, a lot of people, it's all about the journey, the experience itself. And actually, it is about the integration. After I started using psychedelics in a more, in a proper way with integration, I quickly learned that the best insights, the best wisdom, the best growth comes from integration. So it's really, really important in the days and weeks following a psychedelic experience to do, have a routine of exercises or modalities, methods to integrate, like dream journaling, yoga, just journaling in general, walks in nature, anything of that sort. And one of the things that I mentioned is, every person differs with the effects of psychedelics. Me personally, I find dreams particularly vibrant and robust following ayahuasca and DMT journeys. And so that's a really good time to start focusing on your dreams.
I wonder if you could maybe give some examples of how dreams have been helpful, because people often look at their dreams and they're just totally baffled. Like, how can this be helpful? All right.
Well, I'll give an example. It wasn't a dream per se, but it's something that I've written about, these liminal spaces of hypnagogia and hypnopompia. When you're just about to fall asleep or when you're just waking up, these liminal spaces that bridge the space between consciousness and unconsciousness are, oh man, they're incredible. And there was one time after my last ayahuasca retreat, within a week or so, maybe 10 days afterwards, I was integrating and I was taking a nap one day on the couch, and I was waking up in this hypnopompic state and still, in that fuzziness, that fuzzy periphery of consciousness. And then all of a sudden, boom, I just had, whatever you want to call it, an insight, a revelation, a cosmic download. I call it a divine influx. I had this idea about a question or an answer to a question that I was searching for years, about some personal challenges in my family. And I realized that my family might have a history of trauma. And it just hit me out of nowhere. And I think those types of experiences, whether it's in one of those liminal states or in a dream, oh man, they're so helpful, because it changes your whole perspective on some of these challenges and difficulties and adversities you have in your life, because it allows you to change your perspective. And see things from a different angle. And in my case, I was able to, allow some more forgiveness and empathy to open up and blossom.
Wow. Yeah. And there is something about those insights are sometimes difficult to put into words. And, the goal is not to change the memory of whatever events are going on, but to change the perspective of the memory, like to recognize that there was trauma in your family could maybe bring in some more compassion for some of those people.
Exactly. And I think a really good point to bring up here is somebody I mentioned in one of my Substacks, a religion scholar, Houston Smith. He has a nice quote he said, altered states become altered traits. It's not just enough to have a psychedelic journey and then, you can't treat it like it's a drive-through, like you're picking up a combo meal or something. You have to actually do the work.
Right.
It's kind of like lifting weights almost. You can't just go to the gym. You also have to eat right, sleep right, and have rest days. And it's the same thing with psychedelics. So that's the importance of integration. You learn how to change or alter your traits to really improve your life.
I love that. So you mentioned this phrase, which I really want to come back to and have you say a lot more about. What is a divine influx?
Well, I think there's a lot of names for that.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of some kind of insight, a revelation, a cosmic download, a divine influx. I got divine influx from religious studies. There's an old, I think from the 1700s, 1800s maybe, Swedish mystic, Swedenborg. And I think he helped develop that idea that there's these moments when we can connect with consciousness and have access to just divine information. And this is an idea it's becoming popular nowadays, and it's growing. And there's a lot of precedent for this. This is something that a lot of scientists have experienced and talk about. Primarily Nikola Tesla had experiences like this, and also Einstein. Einstein talked a lot about this, that there are ways to connect to the collective unconscious, and being able to do this, you have this numinous or sublime access to information that is just otherworldly.
So what, like even with like Tesla or Einstein, like what were some of the examples of that?
Well, I think Einstein, I haven't researched Einstein's experiences in regards to this a lot, but I think he has talked about those experiences, visions, downloads, helping him, develop E=mc². And I think also Tesla, for a lot of his inventions, he would say he would have visions of them before he even drew them, that they would just come to him, kind of magically or cosmically, mystically, if you would. And then based on those visions, he'd create his inventions.
And of course, these are both incredibly intelligent people that we're talking about, and so there's a lot of, and these people are very much immersed in their work and thinking very deeply about these things. And so, but it seems like these insights that they get come almost magically, as you say, by way of integration. Here's that word again, integration, bringing together all the different parts of what they're studying, and how do you how do you put it together? How do you make it like simple? I'm trying to think of the name of the man who invented the table of elements, periodic table of elements. That he was trying to figure out how to make the elements line up in a simple way, and he, I believe it was another dream-inspired insight, and that he basically studied the elements very intensely, but then he found the way to connect them together that later turned out to have to do with the atomic structure of the elements, which he wasn't even aware of. Nobody knew anything about that yet, but the structure that came to him was based on the way they behaved, the way the elements behavior. So anyway, what I'm saying is that the people study things and they spend a lot of time trying to understand something, and then they have an insight which brings together and simplifies things. Then that's kind of what you're talking about as an influx, is because it seems like it comes out of nowhere, and yet there's a lot of study involved. Like you said, you can't just go to the gym and ignore the other parts of your life. You have to spend a lot of energy investigating the things that you're interested in, and then you start to have insights into them. Around your family. I'm sure you thought about your family a lot.
Yeah. I think it's at least two parts to kind of prime your unconscious. You have to work in a field that you're passionate about, but then you also have to cultivate, nurture your relationship with the unconscious. You have to meditate, do yoga, maybe dream journaling, because there does seem to be this maybe cosmic internet network that is the collective unconscious, which we are all connected to. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, even though we're connected to it, it's an unconscious connection. So we're not able to consciously connect to it on a regular basis. But I think there's a lot of ancient, ancestral, maybe even mystical methods to do this. And like I said, it's becoming a more popular theme of inquiry nowadays. There's a number of people that talk about this on podcasts. And in a more recent example, maybe would be Carrie Mullis, the scientist who discovered PCR in the PCR test. Mm. He had that idea with the help of LSD.
Okay. Right. And so we've talked about integration after a psychedelic event, but one thing that comes to mind is also intention. Like, is there, like, before going into a psychedelic event or before going into sleep for that matter, is there a way that you think people could benefit by setting up a question or some kind of framework or an intention about what they want to integrate? What are they interested in exploring?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
Personally, I found that many times intention for me personally does not work, especially with ayahuasca. Ayahuasca tends to do whatever it wants.
Okay.
And tends to take me, where it has its way with me. It takes me where it wants to take me. I don't have any control over that. Yet, it's also true that intentions work, because like I said, this, kind of divine influx or cosmic download that I had integrating after ayahuasca, I was looking for that answer, but it didn't come to me during the journey or the ceremony itself. It came to me while integrating. So that's a perfect example of why integrating is so perfect, because I think a lot of people might expect or assume that, okay, if I make an intention, prior to the journey, prior to the ceremony, it will come to me during the ceremony or the journey. But this isn't necessarily true. It might come, a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month later.
Mm-hmm. Or, and as you say, it might kind of have its way with you. Like I find that about dreaming too. I'm always jealous of people who can incubate something. They go to sleep saying 3 times, I really want to understand my relationship better or something. And then they have a dream about it. And that's not been my experience. So I might be focused on my relationship, and yet when I wake up in the morning, maybe it's all about climate change or something very different. And so I've come to trust that the dreams are taking me where I really need to go, and there's something important for me there. And it sounds like you've had similar experiences around psychedelics.
Yeah, and I would say it's your unconscious. You have to exercise it. If you don't use it, you lose it. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a muscle. It's excellent to have some kind of meditation habit or practice, or like a practice like lucid dreaming, in priming your brain while you fall asleep, to to condition yourself, be ready to go into a lucid dream state. So I think it's really important to have some way to connect on a deeper level to the unconscious.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I wanted to get into another topic that you've kind of been hinting at and talking about the hypnopompic and hypnagogic states and this idea of a liminal space. And what is this? What do you mean by the boundary of consciousness? This is something that we were chatting about over email. And so tell me about the boundary of consciousness. What does that mean? And how does the dreaming and psychedelics help us explore that?
So the way I like to talk about it and look at it is your eyesight. We see the human eye sees a very small percentage of the entire UV spectrum. What is it, like 5% or 10%? Most of the UV spectrum we don't see with the naked eye. And consciousness works the same way, or the unconscious. There's another interesting conversation happening nowadays about why are we not able to have 24/7 access to the unconscious. And there's this interesting idea coalescing that if this was the case, if we had constant access to the unconscious, the human brain would be experiencing the totality of the history of mankind 24/7. I mean, that is an immense thought, much less actually the experience itself. I mean, that's impossible. We would be overwhelmed. I heard somebody say recently, maybe if this was possible, your brain would be just overwhelmed with trying to survive the experience of hunting down a woolly mammoth while you're trying to lift a sandwich to your mouth. You wouldn't be able to eat or survive. You would be absolutely overwhelmed. So that's what I mean by the bookends or boundaries of consciousness, that there's a design to that, but then there are these ways to go outside of those bookends. But those bookends are liminal spaces where it's a bridge where you have one foot in each world. You have one foot in consciousness and then another foot in the unconscious. And there's a long, long history. I am talking millennia's worth of history investigating, exploring these liminal spaces, primarily with mystical traditions like Taoism, Sufism, even the Maya.
So you're saying that that this consciousness is limited by design, and I can understand that. I've thought even if I had to pay attention to every breath I took, to all the little ins and outs of my digestion, which are also things that are in the unconscious, that I couldn't possibly function. And so it's a good thing that I don't get to pay attention to all those parts of myself.
Yeah, exactly. For a long, long time, I was thinking, man, what a ripoff that we can't just always access those things. Like let me in.
Right.
But then when you realize like there's a reason why the door isn't constantly open and it's for your own survival, then you're like, oh, okay, I got a better idea of what's going on now.
Right. And so tell me about those. Okay, but the thing is that the system can be like a little bit, like maybe there's some things that are in the unconscious that we would like to have access to. So it's a little, the borders are not quite as where we would like them to be, like what is we conscious of and what are we not conscious of? Like it helps to be able to focus, like, in this moment, I'm focusing on talking to you, and there's all kinds of stuff going on in the studio around me, and I'm really focusing on talking to you. And yet, so similarly with our minds, that we would like to stay focused on what we need to do. And yet sometimes there are things that have slipped into unconsciousness, or maybe we're there all along, that we would like to become aware of. Like you talked about your history of trauma in your family, that there could be some value in investigating that and bringing that into consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at my Substack right now, and there's a great little quote from that religion scholar, Huston Smith: "The alchemy of a psychedelic experience, including the experience of dreams such as these, lies in the blending of the two sides of oneself, the rational and irrational, sensical and nonsensical, logical and emotional, intellectual and intuitive, or conscious and unconscious." And that's exactly what liminality is, or being in liminal space. You're connecting opposites And the perfect kind of symbol or metaphor for this is yin yang. And that line in between yin yang, which some people call the way. If you can tiptoe and balance on that line along the way, you're able to integrate emotional and logical, intellectual and intuitive, and have a balance between the two. And then that's when, just magic emerges and appears.
Yeah, magic. We want more magic, don't we?
The world needs it. We need it.
We do. We absolutely do. So, Adam, this is a wonderful conversation. I need to take a short break here, and I would like to say this is Adam Miezio, Miezio. We are talking about dreams and psychedelics, and we're going to get back. We're going to hear some more of these mystical experiences and really get into some of the idea of mysticism and maybe even the Sufis and some other topics related to bringing the subconscious, or shall we say the unconscious, into consciousness. So we are broadcast live from the KSQD studios in Santa Cruz and co-broadcast live in San Jose by KCXU. And we are podcast everywhere. So you can get in touch with Adam Miezio at his webpage, adammiezio.com, or on LinkedIn. Again, Miezio is Miezio. We will be right back. You are listening to The Dream Journal. My name is Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork. And I would like to send out a welcome to our far-flung listeners. We have all of our local folks. We have San Leandro, Monterey. We also have Hickory, North Carolina, and Quebec, Canada. So glad to have you listening in. And if you want to give us a call, you're welcome to call in or email as well. People all over the world are interested in their dreams. If you want to nudge that algorithm, help spread interest in dreaming, please follow the Dream Journal on your favorite podcast app, also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I have a YouTube page, which has all of the Dream Journal podcasts, but it also has quite a few full-length video interviews. Anytime anyone interviews me, I put that on my YouTube page. So really would encourage you to leave ratings and reviews at any of these places, but most importantly, tell your friends. The Dream Journal is to get people talking about dreams. And one way to do that is you can tell them about this podcast. Also, please contact me if you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about a new book or to let folks know about your dream-related offerings. So as a reminder, you can now buy tickets for our local in-person dream conference at the beautiful Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History. The Festival of Dreams will be held October 10th through 12th. Also, if you're in the Boston area, September 26th and 27th, please consider another IASD regional event near Boston in Bridgewater, Massachusetts. I'll be leading a workshop about my treasure hunt approach to dreaming. Plus, I will be singing some of my original dream songs. You can find about both of these fun events at asdreams.org/regionals. And next week, please tune in to hear Amy Jo Ellis talk about her spiritually inspired process of soul healing that she calls the Court of Atonement. So today's guest is Adam Miezio, Miezio, and we're talking about psychedelics and dreaming. All right, Adam. So what started you on your inner quest for personal growth?
That's a great question. Actually, just kind of by chance. I was 18 years old when I first tried and used psychedelics. And I first used psilocybin mushrooms. And I was in college. So it was definitely a recreational endeavor. But as soon as I tried them, I said, "Whoa, hold up here! Something's going on. There's more to life, reality, the world, the universe than meets the eye than what we're normally maybe taught and or allowed to think about in society."
Right, right. So it started out as just something fun, but you realize there's more going on here.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think that's an interesting aspect of psychedelics to explore, because human beings have been using psychedelics and plant medicines, since time immemorial.
Right.
I say psychedelics are like a Swiss Army knife. Pick the way that you want to use psychedelics. They can be used in a variety of different ways and methods to achieve different goals. And recreational use is fine because, as you can see, it can lead you to more profound explorations and discoveries.
I love that. Psychedelics as the Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, your unconscious, it needs all kinds of different tools. Sometimes it might be, like a shoehorn. Sometimes it might be a screwdriver. Maybe sometimes it's a sledgehammer. Who knows? But there's all kinds of different tools that we can use to work with our unconscious.
Okay. Love that. So we have a in-studio question here from Max. So let's get Max on the line.
Okay. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Max. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I won't ask you about your hometown or anything, but we will talk about that later.
Max is also from Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you were talking about the subconscious and the unconscious and voicing a difference between the two and how they're accessed and the profoundness of them. And then you were also mentioning liminal spaces to get into the subconscious, or was it the unconscious?
Probably the unconscious.
Okay, and then so could you give me some differences between the subconscious and unconscious?
Yeah. Your subconscious is similar to or mostly the mental processes that we're not currently aware of but can access. And then the unconscious is a deeper layer, a deeper inaccessible layer of the mind that's associated with deeper buried memories, maybe even psychoanalysis, and holding the information about your capital S self that's maybe been repressed or pushed away out of your awareness entirely.
Okay. And then accessing that through the liminal states, you're talking about like daydreams and stuff like this?
Yeah, there's a number of ways to access liminal spaces. Like I said, the most common and easily accessed method is right as you're falling asleep and right as you're waking up. But then another one has come to mind during this conversation that I think has a lot of similarities, both with psychedelics and dreaming, are float tanks.
Right.
A bit of floating. And oh man, I love it. I would do it every day if I could. And I always tell everybody, you may not like it, you may not want to do it, regularly, but try it once. It's just such a fascinating experience. And I think float tanks can definitely put you in these liminal spaces as well.
I think you've mentioned meditation too, and certainly breathwork practices are another, maybe possibly certain kinds of yoga as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
All of both.
Yeah. I wonder what Einstein was doing when he did his thought experiments.
You think he was in a float tank?
Who knows?
Well, we know John Lilly was, if you know who John Lilly was.
Oh, I know that name. Tell me about him. I vaguely get the name.
John Lilly was, he was crazy in every sense of the term. He was a psychedelic researcher primarily in the 60s. He may have started in the late 50s, and then I think his career may have stretched into the 70s, and he wrote all kinds of books. He was famous for doing dolphin research. He had an island in the Caribbean and was studying dolphin communication with LSD. And that is to say that everyone and every animal was on LSD at that dolphin research laboratory. The dolphins were on LSD, John Lilly was on LSD, everyone was on LSD while he was trying to figure out how to talk with dolphins. And of course, the connection here is he invented the float tank.
Oh, there's a connection. Okay.
Yeah, but if you look at like the initial pictures of the float tank that he invented and built, oh my God, it's nightmare fuel. It's very, very different than the float tanks that we know today.
In what way? I mean, what do you mean nightmare fuel?
So it was vertical. It was kind of like a tube
Really?
that you would go in and be neutrally buoyant because the tube was filled with water. And then you had to put this mask on over your head. And then there was a tube into it, I think, to pump air and oxygen in. So you're like floating in this weird tube with this mask on and another tube going into your mouth so you could breathe. It wasn't exactly very comfortable or welcoming.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. That's pretty crazy. Okay, I've heard a little bit of John Lilly now. That's starting to come back to me, kind of in the Carlos Castaneda regime here.
Yeah. But of course, now float tanks are much, much better. They have improved designs. And the one, I used to live in Austin, and while living in Austin, I did a lot of floating. And I went into a newer model that's basically like a large box, and it only has about 6 inches of water in it. And you float on your back, spread eagle, so it's much, much more inviting and comfortable.
Okay, that's good. All right, well, that's interesting. Any other questions, Max?
Not to come to mind at this moment.
Okay. Well, I was curious about another topic that that you mentioned, Adam, having to do with taking psychedelics while while dreaming, and then in the dream taking psychedelics. And the reason I'm interested by this topic is because I've actually had a whole series of dreams over many years where I'm high in my dreams, where I'm just like in an altered state. And sometimes I remember taking something, sometimes someone gives it to me, sometimes I find it and take it, or sometimes I just am high. And very, very intense psychedelics often. And it can be scary, it can be magical, but it's something that's happened to me pretty regularly in my dreams over the years. And I wanted to hear what you had to say about this idea of dreaming about taking psychedelics.
Well, to be completely transparent, I didn't know about it until within the last week or two.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was like, wow. Because there isn't, I would say, in my research circles or my corner of the psychedelic community, I don't hear a ton about the Venn diagram intersection of dreams and psychedelics. So as I started thinking about dreaming and psychedelics in general and how similar they are, and doing some research and writing a Substack about it, then I just, maybe it was by synchronicity, I found out that, this experience or phenomenon of lucid dreaming occurs when people can choose to use psychedelics while lucid dreaming. And I was like, whoa. That's amazing. That's fascinating. I'd never heard about that before. And there's any number of dream reports online that talk about this phenomenon, that you can have a lucid dream. And I shared one anecdote from a lucid dream report online that I found about somebody who in their lucid dream, went to a mental health fair and chose to use MDMA.
Right, and then as I recall from that Substack, that the person then woke up and some other time later took MDMA and found that the experience was very similar, even though they had never done it before the dream. Isn't that right?
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why I love consciousness. For me, psychedelics is just a gateway to bigger, broader mysteries of consciousness. I think it's the same. You could say the same thing about dreaming and lucid dreaming. What is going on with consciousness that you could have a dream of taking MDMA, and then that feeling from the lucid dream is the same as in real life. I mean, that's incredible.
Right. Well, yeah, that reminds me of Dr. Dawn, who was on the show right before ours, talking about the plants, and this is in the garden show, and she was talking about how a shaman would like meditate in front of certain plants and understand the characteristics of the plants and how they could be used without having to do random doses on people. So they could intuit, basically pick up from their unconscious how to use these plants medicinally just by meditating near them or being with them.
Yeah, and there's another interesting little tie-in here about the power of the mind is, we live in this society and this culture and world where we've elevated rational materialism to an exalted height, almost to our detriment, because we've pushed away consciousness and the immaterial, the illogical. But the biggest pushback in the scientific community is the placebo effect. Nobody has ever figured out how the placebo effect works.
Say more about that.
It's just basically the power of the mind. You know, we can trick ourselves into believing that something that isn't actually real or doesn't actually work still has the benefit and you know, the healing benefit of whatever we're trying to achieve with our health.
Right. Well, it does say something about the power of the mind, and we do have to believe it. The thing about the placebo effect is it works better when the doctors have white coats and they look more serious. You know, that's that's what I've heard, and that it has to do with belief, the power of belief.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the power of the mind. You know, again, since time immemorial, most ancient civilizations have not had scientists and labs and lab coats.
True.
And their science was mysticism.
Yeah, but they've had shaman, and shaman can have a lot of power over people if the people believe in them.
Yeah, and you know, maybe that's a good point. Maybe their shamans were our scientists.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think it's all about the belief. So I'm going to get back to my dreams here, which is about being high while dreaming, because I very rarely lucid dream. So I've never done a lucid dream moment of saying, oh, I'm going to take a psychedelic in a dream and I'm lucid now, and so I will choose this particular one to take. It's always been something that happened in a non-lucid dream. It's something that I just am drawn to, I guess. And I've been curious about this because there's, you know, dreaming itself is an altered state of mind, and yet when I'm having a dream about being high, it's very distinct state. I was going to say mental state, but it's more than just the mental part. There's also a lot of emotional things that happen during these states. And there's something about this that somehow maybe I just needed to have a trip, maybe to help me integrate something. So it's interesting that I just spontaneously have these dreams. You know, it's been a while since I had one, but once a month or so is typical over the last 10, 15 years or so to have some kind of state where I'm getting psychedelically altered in the dream.
And I would ask a rhetorical question: have you integrated with that dream?
Well,
I thought about
absolutely.
What might be encouraging you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, and I do dream work quite regularly. I have a dream person I see every 3 weeks because I'm very interested in integrating my dreams, and I think integrating dreams is as important as integrating psychedelics. And so, and we've definitely looked at these dreams and found that there are places where something very intense is surfacing, and it may be nonverbal, something that I don't know how to put into words necessarily, but I can let it in a way. So it's interesting talking to you about this, helping me integrate these dreams is helpful.
Yeah, and I've been thinking and talking about something recently about consciousness. I think we're living in a very interesting era when consciousness is pretty much fed up with us holding it back. I think maybe for some centuries we've kind of dammed up consciousness and tried to restrain it and contain it. And consciousness now is just saying, okay, I've had enough. I'm breaking out of the chains. And so, you know, sometimes these things come to you that are unexpected. You don't dream about taking psychedelics, or even psychedelics themselves tend to do this. I am a big fan of Hunter Thompson. And Hunter Thompson had an excellent line that he wrote in a letter to one of his friends saying, and his friend was asking, you know, am I ready to do LSD? And Hunter Thompson, I can't remember his line verbatim, but he said something like, you know, are you crazy? You don't find LSD. LSD finds you, but it thinks you're ready. And a similar thing has happened to me both with ayahuasca and 5-MeO-DMT. I wasn't looking to do either one of them, and yet they found me in very kind of cosmic ways. And I said, okay, that's a sign. You know, when it finds you, I think that to me, I think that I interpret that as you're green for go, you're ready for this experience.
Right. Well, there's that old trope that if you hear about it 3 times, then it's definitely for you.
Yeah. So if you personally or anyone has a dream about using or taking psychedelics, yeah, there might be more to that message there.
Maybe. So I have one more topic I want to touch into, Adam, which has to do with mysticism. And I wonder, how does all this consciousness and dreaming and psychedelics and liminal space, how does this all relate to mysticism? And how would you even define mysticism?
To me, very basic, basic definition of mysticism is your own personal direct communication to whatever you want to call it, whatever word you want to choose, the divine, the numinous, collective unconscious, God, source energy, whatever you want to call it.
So this is more of that divine influx sort of idea, right? Yes, I love it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a long, long tradition of mysticism stretching back thousands of years. And basically the difference between religion and mysticism is you take out the intermediary. It's just your own personal connection to the divine. And there's a lot of mystical traditions that have explored this over the history of mankind. And, as I said earlier, some of the mystical traditions that I resonate with the most are Sufism, Taoism, and the Maya. And I think this connects all of these things like dreaming and psychedelics and mysticism and liminal spaces through a broader exploration of consciousness and what's going on here. Like, what are we doing as human beings? And we still can't answer those questions. And I think we're really living not only in, I call it a psychedelic revival, because I think we're living through a consciousness renaissance. There's tons of more interest in exploration and conversations around consciousness. And now our very frame of, or foundation of reality is being challenged. There are a lot of seeds being planted now, which could sometime, who knows when, I don't know if it'll be in our lifetime or after, could upturn the apple cart of rational materialism, namely these conversations around simulation theory, or another kind of similar idea that has some crossover, monistic idealism. This idea that we're maybe not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
That really resonates with me. I feel like this is just a little part of who I am, this opportunity to be human, this limited lifespan I have right now.
Yeah, and a good little example of that with the Maya. There's an expression in the Mayan language. I'm never going to be able to pronounce it correctly, but it's something like in la quech. And in la quech is a Maya greeting, and it means I am another yourself. So this idea of oneness and unity through consciousness. And that's what all mystical traditions explored.
Adam, I don't know if you're familiar with dream terminology, but there's a saying in dreams that all the parts of the dream are the parts of the dreamer. So that feels like I am another yourself, but applied to dreams as well as in waking life. Love that.
Oh my God, that's amazing. That's an amazing synchronicity and segue, Katherine, because I was just thinking, it just came into my mind. Waking Life, the movie. I just thought about that right before you said Waking Life. Anybody who's any kind of a fan of consciousness, liminal spaces, especially dreaming, watch that Richard Linklater movie, Waking Life. It is absolutely one of my favorite movies of all time, because it's just this amazing exploration of the unconscious, dreams, what it means to be human. I highly recommend that.
Absolutely. Mesmerizing animation, too.
Oh, the rotoscoping, that almost is not done today.
No.
I don't know if anybody does rotoscoping anymore. It's very, very expensive to do. And now with AI, people probably just will leave that behind. But it's such a beautiful form and type of animation.
Good. I'm glad you brought that in. So, Adam Miezio, what your webpage, adammiezio.com, miezio.com. On LinkedIn, your Substack called The Divine Influx. These are the best ways for folks to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on my website, on LinkedIn, and Substack.
Excellent. And now I noticed something that you have in your email thread called Global Psychedelic Week. Is that something that you're involved with, or and what is that?
Yeah, I work with Global Psychedelic Week. I've been working with them since late last year. This is the first year of Global Psychedelic Week. It's an online event, November 3rd through the 9th, 2025, coming up in a few months. And it's a global educational event about psychedelics. And I manage and run the blog. So I've been interviewing people, researchers, scientists, therapists, who worked in the psychedelic field since the beginning of this year, kind of laying down a runway to launch the event in November. So if anybody's interested, they can go to globalpsychedelicweek.com. Tickets are on sale now. And the idea is to provide, democratize the space a little bit and allow more people access, because to go to conferences, quite expensive for the ticket, and then even more so if you have to travel. So by having it online and then having it worldwide, it really adds some breadth and depth to people who can learn about psychedelics.
Fabulous. So do you have any last minute thoughts or encouragements for our listeners before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I would say that it's watch Waking Life. Definitely watch Waking Life, because there's a line in there from the boat car guy, which kind of gets at the meat of this mystical liminal idea to always be in a state of constant departure while always arriving.
Always be in a state of constant departure while also always arriving.
Yep.
Love that. Oh, Adam, thank you. This has been fabulous.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Katherine. Really enjoyed the conversation today and grateful for the invite.
All right. Well, take care.
You too. Stay awesome. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, and we are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific at ksqd.org. The podcast is released on the Monday after the show. It spreads interest in dreaming when you subscribe, rate, and review. I am Katherine Bell. You can find out about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. Email me at katherine@ksqd.org, KATHERINE at ksqd.org. Follow Experiential Dreamwork and hashtag the Dream Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to keep up with the shows. I'd like to thank Rick Clough, engineer and music creator. Audio editing by Suki Westling. Phones by Tony Rissimano. Intro and outro pieces are both by Mood Science. And tomorrow morning when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.
Okay. Had an old thought in the old town, waking up, feeling down, was what I learned in the old school. Is there's no fool like an old fool. Make the most of the moments you've got. Time to spend can never be bought. Make the most of the moments you've got. Time to spend.